I recently watched the Netflix docuseries The Verdict on Michael Jackson's trial, and I honestly found it to be quite chilling. Obviously, none of us know what actually happened behind closed doors between strangers, but we need to talk about how even the things that Michael Jackson admitted to were not okay. Because like I always say, we may never know the truth about allegations about people, but we can absolutely make a judgment call based on people's observable behavior. Like, let's say a man gets accused of sexual harassment. We don't know if he actually did it or not, but then he hires a PR team who has in the past ruined the lives of women who alleged abuse. He launches a smear campaign against his accuser. He admits in court-verified text to spinning a narrative. We spend far too long trying to figure out what happened in rooms that we may never know the truth about. It's actually quite simple. We just need to look at a person's pattern of observable behavior. And in Michael Jackson's case, the pattern I see is extremely concerning. So I'm going to run through a couple things from that docuseries that I observed about Michael Jackson's behavior and explain piece by piece why it's concerning to me. Number one, it is not appropriate to have a close relationship with someone over whom you have an excessive amount of power. As we know, abuse is a combination of power and control. A person holds much more power than their victim, and they weaponize that power typically to control the victim. Now, a power imbalance in and of itself is not automatically wrong. It's very rare for two people in a relationship to have exactly the same amount of power. You might have an immigrant wife who lives in her husband's country of origin where she holds a lot less power and her residency hinges on their relationship status. Or a woman from a very wealthy background who's friends with someone who has a much more financially shaky situation. But I've never really heard anyone say the quiet part out loud before, which is that past a certain point, a relationship that's extremely asymmetrical in power cannot reasonably be fair. Even without an exploitation of that power, it becomes inherently exploitative. Let's say, for example, that there's a famous person dating a very smitten parasocial fan. That fan is never going to be their equal. Simply by nature of them being a smitten parasocial fan, that person is likely to dismiss their own needs, to do anything they can to keep their partner, because they feel like they need that person way too much. So they might do things they're not comfortable with, agree to things they don't truly want, accept things that cross their boundaries, even without the famous person ever coercing them, because it's that important to that person to not lose them. Or you might have a therapist having a personal relationship with their current client. Even if they never pressure their client into anything or weaponize what they know about their mental health, they will always inevitably have the upper hand in that relationship because of their professional authority, the fact that they know extremely private details about that person's mental health, the fact that that person might want them to maintain a positive regard for them because their mental well-being relies on it. So there are certain situations where the power imbalance is just too vast that a personal relationship is not appropriate. And in Michael Jackson's case, the power imbalance between him and those children literally could not be any wider. We're talking about the most famous person in the world who has unlimited wealth, who is a grown adult, versus a young child, often from a disadvantaged background, with family trauma from a broken home, often with a terminal cancer diagnosis. Even if Michael Jackson were to never weaponize the power that he holds over that child, simply by nature of the power imbalance existing, the relationship becomes exploitative. It should also be noted that predators very often target children from difficult circumstances, be it a broken home, abusive parents, low socioeconomic status, previous traumatization, precisely because those additional layers of power that they hold over them makes it easier to groom those children. You know, like a child is much more easy to manipulate if they rely on your financial generosity for basic needs, if they're starved for connection because of challenging relationships that they've had in the past, if they have low self-esteem due to previous traumas. I want to be clear that a person seeking out a relationship with someone who holds less power than them doesn't automatically make them a predator. Some people are generally very altruistic. They want to help people from disadvantaged backgrounds. But it's something to pay attention to, especially if it's paired with any signs of manipulation. And unfortunately, that leads me right into my second point about Michael Jackson's observable behavior, the manipulativeness of his rhetoric. But before I do, if this topic has you feeling sick like it does me, you should book a doctor's appointment with today's sponsor, ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a completely free app and website designed to help you find high-quality and in-network healthcare providers. So often just taking that first step to book an appointment is the hardest part. You want to pick up the phone and call someone. You don't know if they're going to take your insurance or not. ZocDoc literally solves all of that. With over 100,000 providers in a wide range of specialties, you can pick the one you want, instantly book an appointment, tailor what kind of healthcare provider you're looking for, see reviews, make sure that they take your insurance. In a world of very unaffordable healthcare, ZocDoc is one tool that can just make things a lot simpler for you. All you have to do is create an account and book the type of appointment that you're looking for, so that you don't have this low-level anxiety simmering in the back of your head that you know there's an appointment you should be making and you're still not doing it. Click the link in my video description or scan the QR code on screen to easily book local, top-rated doctors who can see you quickly. Thank you so much to ZocDoc. So the second thing that I noticed in that docuseries was Michael Jackson's pathologization of anyone who raised concerns about his behavior. Obviously, when most people hear that a grown man wants to share a bed with a child that's not his own, it feels automatically inappropriate. There's massive risk for abuse happening. And it begs the question, why does this person want to be doing this in the first place? A lot of parents don't even feel comfortable sending their kids to sleepovers at somebody else's house because of the risk, let alone having their child be in close communication with some random man who's developed an interest with them, to have that child spend the night in his house, sleep in his bed, to invite that man on family trips and also have the child sleep in a bed with him. It's extremely concerning and inappropriate behavior. But Michael Jackson responded to people's concern in what I consider to be a very manipulative way, by flipping the script so that the person who raised the concern seems like the crazy one or the one who needs to get their head out of the gutter or something. For example, he called it wacky that some parents are not okay with their child sleeping in his bed.
But is it really appropriate for a 44-year-old man to share a bedroom with a child who is not related to him at all?
That's a beautiful thing.
That's not a worrying thing?
Why should they be worrying? Who's the criminal? Who's Jack the Ripper in the room? This is a guy trying to help heal a child. I'm sleeping in a sleeping bag on the floor. I gave him the bed because he has a brother named Star. So him and Star took the bed, and I'm on the floor in the sleeping bag.
Did you ever sleep in the bed with them?
No. But I have slept in the bed with many children. I sleep in the bed with all of them. It's very loving. That's what the world needs now. More love, more
the world needs
heart.
A man who's 44 sleeping in a bed with children.
No, you're making it all wrong.
Well, tell me, help me.
Because what's wrong with sharing a love? You don't sleep with your kids or some other kid who needs love, who didn't have a good childhood?
No, I don't. I would never dream of sleeping.
I would.
I would never dream.
Because you've never been where I've been, mentally.
What do you think people would say if I said, well, I've invited some of my daughter's friends round or my son's friends round and they're going to sleep in the bed with me tonight?
That's fine.
What do you think their parents would say?
If they're wacky, they would say you can't. But if you're close family, like your family, you know them well. And
even if Michael Jackson himself didn't have nefarious intentions, if he cared about the welfare of children, then he would know that other people don't have as pure intentions as he does, especially considering the allegations against his own father, Joe Jackson. So I honestly don't give a shit if Michael Jackson had kind-hearted intentions. You don't make an exception for a really well-intentioned therapist who wants to start dating their client, and you certainly don't make an exception for an incredibly powerful man who wants to start sleeping in the same bed as a vulnerable child, no matter how much he swears that his intentions are pure. If he actually cared about those children, he would be concerned about the dangerous precedent it sets, because maybe his intentions are innocent, but the next man over might not be. But regardless, a person who's engaging in dubious behavior for actually innocent reasons might say, listen, I disagree with your perspective, and this is why, but I respect why you see things that way. I understand you're just trying to be protective over your child. A predator says, you're wacky for thinking there's anything wrong with it. Get your head out of the gutter. Why don't you trust me? Is basically low-level Darvo. Flip the script so that your accuser has to go on the defense while you frame yourself as the victim. This is how groomers use emotional blackmail to manipulate their victims. Fear. If you tell anyone about this, they're going to take you away from your family. Let's just keep this a secret between us. And don't even tell your parents, because then I'm going to get in big trouble. And you wouldn't want that, would you? And if you do tell someone, I'm going to tell them your own secrets, and then you're gonna get in trouble too. Obligation. Your mom said you have to hug me hello, otherwise you're being rude. And didn't you like the expensive toy I bought you last week? Don't you think I deserve a little affection in return? Guilt. Why won't you do this? Don't you love me? I'm so sad that you don't trust me. Emotional blackmail is exactly how I would categorize another allegation that was made against Michael. Remember that family who he settled for $23 million for? The mother of that alleged victim said that Michael Jackson came to her one day and he insisted, "Why can't this child sleep in my bed?" And that he was trembling and he was saying, "Why don't you trust me?" And that he looked so shaken up and so insistent that she caved. And immediately after she caved, he gave her a very expensive gift. Now here's why I personally believe this family's allegations, aside from the fact that he settled for $23 million, which, like, why would an innocent person need to do that? This type of behavior is extremely consistent with how groomers behave. If we assume that this family was just out for money, presumably they would just make an outlandish claim of abuse, and that's that. But there's not just the allegation of abuse. There's also the mom describing in great detail how groomers actually behave, the emotional blackmail that they take part in. We're meant to believe that this family just was so well read in how groomers behave. They studied this inside out, and they fabricated a story that so perfectly exemplified the behaviors that predators often take part in. Either there's some sort of like criminal masterminds, or the allegations were true. To me, the simplest solution is often more credible than the criminal mastermind's conspiracy. Then you also had Janet, Gavin's mom, who alleged that they wanted to leave Neverland, but Michael Jackson's team was insisting that they stay. And Michael's associate admitted in the docuseries that they were tracking the family with a PI. So there did seem to be some weaponization of his power over the family and some coercion going on. People like to use this argument about Michael Jackson that he was just an innocent little child on the inside, and him sleeping in the same bed as children was healing for both him and the children. It's not really relevant to me what was healing to Michael Jackson when we're talking about the protection of a much more vulnerable and powerless child. I don't give a fuck what an adult man thinks is healing for him. The child's well-being comes first, and there are certain boundaries in place meant to prevent predators from circumventing them. An adult's hurt feelings about not being trusted or not having the opportunity to heal himself by sleeping in the same bed as a child, it just is not relevant to me whatsoever. If Michael Jackson wanted to heal his inner child or whatever, he had all the wealth in the world to go to an entire team of therapists to cuddle a consenting adult, to have children of his own so that it would be more appropriate to co-sleep with them, which he actually did. And if he truly cared about healing the attachment wounds of those children, then he would know that inviting a child into his bed sets a very dangerous precedent. He would instead just provide emotional support to children within appropriate boundaries, like with their parents present. Or he would create Neverland for them to have fun in without any strings attached, without it being on his physical property where he lives, without him needing to see the kids enjoying it. There is no universe in which inviting a child into his bed is healing for that child. It's like a therapist telling a client that healing comes in mysterious ways while hitting on them. Actually, it's a lot worse than that. But I feel like I'm going a little bit crazy here because I feel like I'm sort of stating the obvious, and I'm already anticipating that a lot of Michael Jackson's fans are going to be in my comments disagreeing with me. I thought it was so strange in the docuseries how there were these like parasocial fans screaming about Michael Jackson's innocence from all the rooftops. What would lead a person to, for example, quit their job and move to California so that they can spend their whole life showing support to a pop star that they've never met before, or to chase that pop star's car on the road and scream, you're innocent," while holding up a banner that is also claiming their innocence? I think most of us can look at that and think, that's very extreme behavior. What the fuck is going on with that person? Whether you think Michael Jackson was innocent or guilty, most of us are not that invested in the life of a stranger. I especially thought it was odd because why would you as a fan need to scream you're innocent at someone if he's actually innocent? Because presumably he's aware of his own innocence, right? It's because those fans weren't trying to convince him. They were trying to convince themselves. Have you ever noticed that the people screaming the loudest mantras from any rooftop they can find are often just talking to themselves? Like people who come on the internet and just like scream at their audiences to not do the very thing that they then later do. It's very obvious that they were trying to convince themselves to not do that thing this whole time. When people have very emotionally disproportionate reactions to something and they start loudly screaming something from the rooftops, it's often because they're trying to convince themselves of that thing. They're They're not trying to convince other people. It's because they cannot handle the reality of what might happen if that thing they're screaming from the rooftops is not true. It's a similar concept to reaction formation, the defense mechanism, when someone vehemently claims to hold the opposite attitude that they unconsciously actually hold. So for example, someone needs you to know that they think Michael Jackson is innocent because deep down they worry that he might not be, and they can't handle that possibility. But why would a stranger's innocence be so important to them psychologically? It's because of what Michael Jackson means to them. Let's be real, Michael Jackson was probably the best performer of all time. He had an angelic voice. He was an incredibly talented dancer. His songs were moving and catchy. Most of us, when we hear a Michael Jackson song, we can't help but dancing and feeling intense happiness. And people don't really care so much about what a person says or does, so much as they care about how that person makes them feel. So they're willing to make more excuses for someone who makes them happy, and they're less willing, for example, to actually listen to the content of what someone is saying if that person is making them feel bad. They just kind of shut down and they think this is a bad person because that person has made me feel bad things. Imagine how difficult it would be for you to admit that the person who has made you feel such elevated emotions, the person that you have idolized and admired this whole time, was actually causing such disgusting harm, that they were hiding in plain sight, luring children to them while you have supported them doing so. That the person who was making you feel so happy was also causing so much suffering to other people. Some people lack the psychological strength to come to terms with that sort of thing, so they overcompensate with this dramatic, disproportionate, spoken belief in that person's innocence. There is so much more I wish I could say about this docuseries, about Michael Jackson in general, but I need to refrain from saying it because I'm not trying to make psychological speculations here. That's exactly my point. You don't need to make unfalsifiable speculations if you are simply going by a person's pattern of observed behavior. A person who is falsely accused of something will have shown through their behavior across time that they behave with integrity. They will not have evidence of pushing inappropriate boundaries. The people who hold less power than them, who have come into contact with them, will have stories of that person treating them with respect. Like Keanu Reeves, how he refuses to touch his fans when he's taking photos of them. We need to spend a lot less time worrying about what happened behind closed doors, stories that we may never know the truth about, and much more time looking at a person's actual observable behavior. I strongly recommend you watch The Verdict on Netflix because, like I said, there is so much more I wish I could say, and thank you for watching.